I'm Simon, 70 years old, and I've reached a point where the quiet feels louder than anything I've ever known. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that sits with you. The kind that reminds you of conversations you never finished, words you never said, and people who slowly drifted away while you were telling yourself everything was fine. I'm not telling this story because I want forgiveness. Most of the people I owe it to are gone or too far removed now for it to matter. I'm telling it because I finally understand something that took me most of my life to see. Silence doesn't arrive like a fight. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel dangerous when it begins. It just settles in. And if you let it stay long enough, it quietly destroys love. These days, my mornings are slow. I wake up earlier than I need to, mostly out of habit. The house is quiet, but not because someone else is sleeping. It's quiet because there's no one else here. I make coffee for one. I sit at the same small table I've had for years. Sometimes I look at my phone. Sometimes I don't. There are names I could call, numbers I still remember. But the space between us has grown unfamiliar, and I don't always know what I'd say anymore. That didn't happen all at once. It happened gently. So gently that for a long time, I didn't notice it happening at all. When I was younger, I thought silence meant stability. No arguments meant things were good. No complaints meant people were content. I thought peace was the absence of conflict. I didn't understand that sometimes it's just the absence of honesty. In my 20s and 30s, I was busy. That's the word I always used. Busy sounded responsible. Busy sounded necessary. I had a job that demanded my attention. At least, that's how I justified it. Long hours, deadlines, the kind of work that followed you home even when you were technically off the clock. I wasn't chasing wealth or recognition. I wasn't trying to escape my family. I truly believed I was doing what I was supposed to do. Provide, be reliable, keep things running. At home, I was tired, not just physically, but mentally. So when conversations felt heavy or emotional, I postponed them. I'll talk about it later. Now's not the right time. Let's not turn this into a whole thing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam doors. I just stayed quiet. And for a while, that worked. My partner would sigh, then drop the subject. The house would return to normal. Dinner would still get made. Bills still got paid. Life kept moving. I mistook that for harmony. What I didn't see was what was happening underneath. The pauses between conversations grew longer. Eye contact became brief. Laughter showed up less often than only when company was around. We still talked about practical things, schedules, groceries, plans for the weekend. But the deeper things stayed buried. When something bothered her, I could feel it in the room. But instead of asking, I waited. I told myself she'd speak up if it really mattered. That was my mistake. I thought love would insist. I didn't realize it can also retreat. There were small moments I remember now, not because they seemed important at the time, but because I can finally see what they meant. Her standing in the doorway while I watched TV, clearly wanting to say something. Me glancing up and saying, "Give me a minute," and never circling back. A car ride where she went quiet halfway through, staring out the window. Me turning up the radio instead of asking why. Birthdays where she smiled but didn't quite meet my eyes. Me assuming she was just tired. I didn't ignore her feelings out of cruelty. I ignored them out of discomfort. I didn't know how to talk about emotions. I wasn't raised to. In my family, you dealt with things by not talking about them. You worked harder. You stayed busy. You kept moving. Silence was how we survived, or so I thought. Years passed that way. Not bad years, just quiet ones. From the outside, we probably looked fine, stable, dependable. But intimacy doesn't die from explosions. It dies from neglect. I remember one evening, years ago now, we were sitting at opposite ends of the couch. The television was on, but neither of us was watching. She said, almost casually, "Do you ever feel like we don't really talk anymore?" I shrugged. I said something like, "We talk all the time." She didn't argue. She just nodded. That was the moment I should have leaned in, asked what she meant, let the silence break. Instead, I let it close back up. I didn't realize that was her reaching out one last time, not dramatically, not desperately, just quietly. Over time, she stopped trying, and I told myself everything was fine. It's strange how the mind protects itself. I convinced myself that the absence of conflict meant contentment, that her quiet meant acceptance. In truth, it meant distance. The turning point didn't arrive with shouting or tears. It arrived with exhaustion. She got sick. Nothing sudden at first, just the kind of illness that slowly takes up more space in your life. Doctor's appointments, medication schedules, fatigue. I showed up for the logistics. I was good at that. But emotionally, we were strangers by then. There were moments in hospital rooms where the beeping machines were the loudest thing between us. I wanted to say something meaningful, something honest, but I didn't know how to begin. I told myself there would be time, after this appointment, after things stabilized. There's always a later, until there isn't. The day she died was quiet, too quiet. No dramatic final words, no big confessions, just a slow realization that everything I had postponed was now impossible. In the days after, people told me I'd been a good partner, that I'd been reliable, that I'd been there. They weren't wrong, but they weren't fully right either. I had been present in body, not always in spirit. Grief has a way of replaying old scenes, not the big moments, but the small ones. I remembered the conversations I avoided, the questions I didn't ask, the times I chose comfort over connection. And for the first time, I understood the cost of silence. It wasn't that I failed loudly, it was that I disappeared quietly. There are things that can't be fixed once time runs out. No amount of reflection brings someone back. No understanding repairs what was never spoken. I live with that now. Not in a dramatic way, just in the background of my days. Sometimes I'll think of something I wish I had said. A simple acknowledgement, an apology, an admission of fear. And then I remember there's no one left to hear it. That's what silence does. It leaves you alone with your clarity. If you're listening to this and you're younger than me, I won't tell you what to do. I don't believe in instructions anymore. I'll just tell you what I wish I had understood. Silence feels safe in the moment. It avoids discomfort. It keeps things calm. But love needs friction. It needs honesty, even when it's awkward, even when you don't have the right words. People don't drift away because of one bad conversation. They drift away because of too many conversations that never happened. If someone in your life grows quiet, don't assume they're fine. They might just be tired of reaching. And if you're the quiet one, hiding behind responsibility or routine, ask yourself what you're protecting and what it might cost you. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just aware now. Aware that time is shorter than I once believed. Aware that presence matters more than productivity. Aware that silence left unchecked becomes a wall. These days, when I sit alone in the morning, I try to be honest with myself. About what I miss, about what I can't change. There are still people in my life, friends, family. I try not to let things go unsaid anymore. Not because I'm brave, because I know what happens if I don't. I don't have many years left. I can feel that. And I've made peace with it mostly. But if this story sits with you at all, if it reminds you of someone you've grown quiet with, maybe don't wait for the perfect moment. There usually isn't one. Sometimes all love needs is for the silence to be broken. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.